is another general life question, and I had formulated that question for myself pretty nicely, and then you started off with telling us about the limiting factors and dealing in life, and it's brilliant. So I need to regather my question. I still want to put it out there, and so you said basically in another speech that, you know, life is happening for us and not to us, and we should regard life as a meditation. We mentioned that yesterday, and I love this thought. And you also addressed just now, you addressed limiting factors that encounter us when we do that. And of course, fear and ego and beliefs are clearly the key points here. But I feel that very often they manifest themselves. These factors manifest themselves in emotions. And when my intellect kicks in, I can stop that. You know, I can control my intellect. I can gather myself, and I can take 1 or 2 deep breaths and then reboot. But when the emotions kick in, it's a completely different ball game there. And I'm aware that, you know, everything happens because we have choices, and we need to deal our choices and make our choices. And probably these emotions are putting me in a situation to do exactly that. Now, of course, it will lead to the question of fears and ego. And therefore, my question will also involve to ask you for tips how to proactively find the nature and scope of fears, and because I want to proactively deal with that, and how to release my ego. But to enter this question more from the emotional, from the feeling side, from the being level, what happens when I encounter an emotional situation? I feel a trigger happening, something that triggers me, and I find myself in a tunnel. It feels like a tunnel, and the usual choices are not allowed anymore. It's like a field, it's like a gravity field, maybe a high entropy field where this emotion is playing out. And it keeps me in there, and it kind of urges me to act out my emotion. And I observe myself. I can watch myself acting myself and my emotions out. And I can also see and observe, you know, the rush that comes up in my brain and my entire system. And I also notice how I feel bad about it very often. You know, I can observe that, I can witness it, but there's not much I can do. You know, it's just kind of, it's like you jump into a current and down a set of rapids or something. It just takes you down, and you find yourself tumbled up at the end, you know, and beaten up with bruises and stuff. And you say, wow, you know, what did I do wrong when I encountered the set of rapids? So yeah, I understand we need to pull ourselves up at the bootstraps and interact and be an explorer and go through all this and learn what can I do differently. But still, you know, these emotions hit me every time. And I would like to put that out, because I would be happy to take away from this session some more tips how to proactively deal with my emotions, how to address my fears or the underlying limiting factors, as you called them, and how to, you know, get closer to the core of things and do something that could help me to progress in this whole process a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, that's a really good question. Emotions. You know, most people, if you ask them who they are, you know, who are you? They would say that their intellect represents who they are. That's their thinking person. Who are you? Well, my intellectual side, that's who I am. I'm that person. You know, this person's, you know, wife or husband, and this person's parent, and this, you know, I do this kind of work, and you could explain all those things that you interact with, and it's all from the intellectual side of what you do. But that's only what you think you are. That's basically more your image of how you see yourself. Those emotions represent the real you. those emotions are who you are, really. And when you say that if your intellect can get in charge, it says, okay, emotions, that's enough. And you can tamp them down and get them back into line and take care of business. But all that's doing is pushing them down into a space that you can't see. In other words, you push them out of sight. You're not getting rid of them. You're just banishing them from your intellect. Now, the intellect doesn't have those emotions to deal with anymore. So that's akin to sweeping dirt under the rug. And of course, you can sweep enough dirt under a rug, pretty soon, it's noticeable. Everybody comes in and say, what's that huge smelly lump under your rug? Yes. So it gets, the older you get, the worse strategy that is, because that lump keeps getting bigger and bigger and smellier. And they're harder and harder to deal with as you get older, because you're continually pushing them down there under the rug. So what do we do about that? But the emotions live at the being level, not in the intellect. They're intuitive. You don't think about feeling angry. It just roars up out of you, and it's anger and it's there, and you growl and you show your teeth because that's just how you feel. It's you at the core. So that is being, those emotions are being level stuff, and that really is the real you. It's the real you unchained. The intellect chains that dirt under the rug there. So when you kind of lose it to those emotions, basically that's the real you unchained, until the intellect can get you back under that rug again and kind of wish it all away. But you can't wish those things away. They're a part of you. They are just actually the real you. So how do we deal with that part of us that's kind of down there, that expresses that fear, expresses those beliefs, expresses that ego in these ways? Sometimes being so strong that it just blows the intellect aside and takes over. Like you say, there's nothing you can do about it much. Your emotions just kind of go, and the intellect's along for the ride. And then the intellect is left trying to come up with excuses afterwards, to tell people and to tell yourself about why that really wasn't such a bad thing, or that you're sorry, and whatever else. Your intellect then tries to make amends afterwards, but those emotions just take on a life of themselves. Well, what you do about that is several things. If you want to be more direct and forceful about it, when you're in that spot where you are kind of the third party, you see those emotions, but you also are apart from them. And you see that you're seeing those emotions. It's like a third party viewpoint. It's not just that you're swept up and lost in them. You see them, but there's not much you can do about them. Well, that's the point. If you want to take the stronger approach, is that self that's there watching them but can't do much needs to do something. Just say, stop. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to feel that way. That's not helpful. It's not right. It isn't making anything better. It's making things worse. Just quit. And that person needs to have a force of will strong enough that the emotions stop. They just quit because they see, or because that part of you sees the irrationality in them. It sees the destructiveness in them. It sees the fact that it doesn't help anything in them. Because there is a part of you say, yeah, well, it might not help, but it's going to make me feel better. And you go for it anyway. That's one part of you. But that other part has to say, no, stop. It's just going to make everything worse. Now you're going to have to deal with a bigger mess afterwards than you had to deal with before. So just cut it out. So that little part that's third, kind of got the third party there looking at it, needs to get some strength and some willpower and some force to kind of be the adult in charge, and tell the unruly little angry child to cease and desist. And that just has to be a force of will. All right, now, if you can do that, that's a more direct approach. A lot of times, and a lot of people can't do that. Now, Michael, you're ahead of the game because you do have that third perspective. You're not really the emotion, you're not really the intellect. You're just seeing this game being played, between both of them, and you're an observer without any power. So you're halfway there in that you've got that right perspective of being able to see this happen. So that's at least 50% of the trip to get to that point, because for most people, they don't have that third person view. It just happens and it's all totally out of their control. They don't get that look at it. So once you get that look at it, you should have the ability to have force of will to stop it. And don't think, I don't want to act that way. Think, I don't want to be that way. There's a very big difference, and you need to emphasize, I don't want to be that way. It's unhelpful. There's no value in it. And that should work for you. Now, for others who don't have that third person view, what you can do is just have an intent all the time. Have an intent in the back of your mind, a intent that always is there, an intent that you're always giving just a little energy to. And that is that you don't want to be that way being angry, upset, annoyed, stressed, anxiety. You just don't want to be that way. You want to be open. You want to be caring. You want to be aware. But you don't want to, it's not that you don't want to have emotion. Emotions are good. You don't want to have negative emotions. Don't want to focus on not having emotions. We don't want to go there. That's just stuffing it under the rug. Emotions are part of you, your consciousness. You have emotions, but the emotions need to be positive. Well, emotions can be sad without being negative, but they need to be positive. So have this intent. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to get upset. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel anything inadequate, whatever your fears are. I don't want to feel that people are challenging my authority or challenging my goodness or challenging my intent. I realize that when people challenge me, it's not about me, really. It's about them, not about me. So I don't have to react to that emotionally. I can just let that be. And I can react to that with caring, with understanding, trying to see their viewpoint rather than defending myself against, evil. I can just see their viewpoint, try to see it from their side. And once you can see it from their side, then you have a higher probability of finding compassion for them and understanding what fears and beliefs and ego is pushing them, and realize that they're really not in control either. They're just being pushed around by their own fears, and they're not very happy, and they're struggling just like everybody else. And then the compassion comes instead of being angry. You see, so that's where you want to get to. And if you have that intent in the back of your mind all the time, I don't want to be that way. I just want to be aware. I want to understand everything. I want to be aware of everything. So I'm not sweeping anything under the rug. I'm not putting things down where I can't see them. Awareness I want, but I want it to be positive. I want it to be helpful. I want it to be constructive. And if you have that mindset always, then you will be. That intent will modify future probability, and you will slowly just become that. But you have to grow up enough to know that that's an intent that you'd like to have. So that's part of the pulling yourself up with the bootstraps. When you get to the point that you realize that that intent is one that you want and want to encourage, then you have to also be grown up enough to realize that keeping it in your mind, keeping it as an intention, an active intention in your mind all the time, is a very powerful tool. So yes, 24/7, well, maybe not. When you're sleeping, go have dreams. But maybe it's 16/7. We'll take 8 hours out to sleep and not worry about it. But 16/7, just keep that in your mind all the time. I don't want to have those kind of negative reactions. I don't want to be negative. I do want to be aware. If somebody, slights me or says something rude, it's not that I want to be oblivious to it. I want to be aware of it. I need to be aware of everything going on. And I need to be aware of why it's going on. Awareness is good. I just need to act positively toward it. I'm not in denial. Oh, everything's happy. Everything's exactly the way it should be. And, if somebody's angry and whatever, that's just okay. That's what they need to be. And if I'm angry, that's okay. It's what I need to be. It's not that. It's that you don't want to be negative. And you realize that a lot of people are, and you're going to have to deal with it. Well, those other angry people are not an excuse for you to be angry. You just have to deal with them positively. So if you keep that intent in your mind, 16/7, then you will see that you will start to change. And a little bit, the first change is the hardest. After that, it gets easier. So patience, pulling yourself up with the bootstraps is a process that requires patience and stick-to-itiveness. Stick-to-itiveness basically means focus. It has to be important to you. You see, so that's why it doesn't really work for a lot of people, because it really has to be important to you. If it's just your intellect that says, yeah, I should do that. That sounds good. I need to do that. It won't work. It just won't work because you won't do it. You won't think about it. It won't happen. And you can say, well, yeah, I'll put a thing on my refrigerator. I'll post a note that says, be positive. I'll write be positive 100 times in my notebook, every day. I'm going to do these things. But those are all things the intellect is doing. That's not where the action is. The action isn't in the intellect. It's not that you intellectually think about it 16/7. It's that you feel it. You be it. You put intention into it at the being level. Just a little bit. Doesn't take long, 10 seconds. Just think about it. I don't want to be negative. These negative reactions just makes things worse. I want to stop making things worse for myself. I want to stop limiting myself, limiting my relationships. Just don't want to be that way. And if you really mean that sincerely, then it'll work. And you will stop being that way. If you're just intellectually going through the motions, it won't make any difference. You'll write it on your board, you'll put it on your refrigerator with a magnet, you'll do all that stuff and it won't make any difference because it's all in your intellect. You don't really have sincerity. The reason you don't have sincerity is because you're not grown up enough to realize all the damage that the negativity does to you. And if you don't realize what the negativity does to you, it's because you really have so much negativity yourself that you can't see it. So you see how it works? You got to peel this onion back just one piece at a time. That's what requires patience. Every time you grow up a little, a whole new set of possibilities pop up in your life. Every time you grow up a little bit, all the possibilities rearrange themselves. New things now become possible that weren't before. So you work with those new possibilities, and then you grow up a little bit more. New things become possible, and you work with those. That's the growing up, and that's how you approach those emotions. And, it's kind of a painless thing to do. The forceful thing, going on there and saying, stop it, that can work, and it's probably faster and more direct. It's just taking that intent and forcefully demanding it rather than keep repeating it until it finally works its way down to the being level. You know, it's a tougher, quicker method, but it's not one that's available to everybody, because first you have to gain that third person perspective before you can do that. So anyway, that's the way to approach that. Oh, we're doing a lot of life lessons here today, aren't we?
Yeah. Tom, thank you very much for elaborating on that. And I'm glad you mentioned compassion. I'll add that to my list of intentions more strongly. I think it's a very important factor. And I don't want to extend too much, but still add one question, because we are talking about the LCS and exploring it. Do you think it's possible I can ask LCS to show me my fears, to deal with them also more directly, you know, talking about limiting factors? And you also mentioned the fear trainer and the single player game. But can I ask LCS to more directly confront me with my fears so I can get that experience and face it and not wait for it to happen? And
absolutely, you can do that. And I've known several people who have done that. And probably about half of them regret it, because they said, okay, LCS, I'm ready. I'm growing up. You sock it to me. I'm ready for it. And the next thing I see them, they got the tail between their legs and they're oh so sad because, wow, did the LCS sock it to them? And, you know, they weren't ready at all for it. They just thought they were ready. They wanted to be ready, but they were crushed. So yes, you can ask the LCS, but be careful what you wish for. Be ready for it. Be really ready. Now, if you are ready, it's a good thing to do. You know, if you're real ready.
The worst thing is the fear of perishing, right? I mean, to perish, the fear of perishing is I think the ultimate fear in all humans, and you know that I'm aware that that comes up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but yes, you can ask the LCS, and the LCS will probably do that for you. You're sincere, you want it to happen, the LCS will probably do it. And they'll probably do it in a form that it feels that you have a, you know, better than a 50-50 chance of succeeding with. So it's not going to try to slam you with something that's going to be way above your head to deal with. It'll probably give you something, but it's going to give you something that is a challenge for you to succeed with. It's not going to be an easy putt, you know, it's going to be something that you're going to have to stretch out to do. But it will show you those. It'll either give you fear tests that show the fear. Now that's more of an intellectual thing. You can look at it later, but mostly what it does is it gives you a life situation. It just gives you something in your life to deal with, and then you deal with it. And if you deal with it well, wow, you take a big step up pretty quickly. So that's a direct way to do it, but it takes courage to do that, because you will be, you know, you will be given that fear, which means you will be tested. I think sometimes when the LCS kind of overwhelmed the people that were that were sorry that they ever asked, part of it was a lesson to them, because they were coming more from a place of ego. I'm tough, I'm big, I can handle it, you know, sock it to me, LCS, you know, I'm almost there, I just need one more little step, you know, that kind of arrogance. And I think what it was doing wasn't just giving them something to challenge their fear, it was giving them a slam dunk to help them, you know, get rid of their arrogance and their ego to a point where they were grown up enough to actually get rid of fear.
Understood clearly. Thank you, Tom.
Mm-hmm.